Welcome to another edition of Unlikely Bible Heroes. May seem that way to some, or it might not, because as Paul Harvey says, we know the rest of the story, and these people to us are people that we admire and esteem. From Mark chapter 2, I want to talk about four men. I'd love to tell you their names, but I don't know their names. The Bible doesn't give their names, but it doesn't take away at all from their heroics. In Mark chapter 2, beginning in verse 1, again, Jesus entered into Capernaum after some days. It was heard that he was in a house, and immediately many were gathered, so that no longer was there any room even to the door. Think about that. Here's a house. Jesus is there. There's not any room. It is packed to capacity. And he proclaimed the word to them. Then came to him, bringing one who was paralyzed, who was carried by four men. When they could not come near to him because of the crowd, they unroofed the roof where he was, and digging through, they let down the cot on which the paralytic lay. And seeing their faith, Jesus said to the paralytic, "Child, your sins are forgiven to you." But some of the scribes were sitting there reasoning in their hearts, "Why does this one speak such blasphemies? Who can forgive sins except God only?" And instantly, knowing in his spirit that they reasoned so among themselves, he said to them, "Why do you reason these things in your heart? What is easier, to say to the paralytic, 'Your sins are forgiven you,' or to say, 'Arise and take up your cot and walk'? But so that you may know that the Son of Man has authority over sins upon the earth," he said to the paralytic, "I say to you, arise and take up your cot and go to your house." And immediately he arose and took his cot and went out before them all, so that all were amazed and glorified God, saying, "We never saw it this way before." Think about the tremendous blessing that came out of this. And had it not been for four men whose name we don't even know, this blessing wouldn't have come. I want to think about some things, and I want you to think about them as well, that would help us to be spiritual heroes today about these four men. And the first thing I note about them is they would not be discouraged. In verse 2, they could not get in because of the crowd. They could have very easily and rationally said, "Well, we'll just carry our friend back home and we'll wait for another time." But they didn't do that. They did not get discouraged because of the circumstances. I'm afraid sometimes we get discouraged because of the circumstances and miss what possibly could be done. Secondly, I note about them, they went the extra mile. When they saw that it was so full in the house they couldn't get in, they removed the roof and let the man down. Can you imagine in today's society what liability there was? Can you imagine going to, in all likelihood, a stranger's house and taking off his roof? But they did that. And they let that man down so that he could see Jesus. We need to be extra milers. We need to be people that are willing to take some risk and do what may not necessarily be politically correct. These four men brought a man to Jesus. The very best person that you could bring someone to, they brought their friend to. They brought him to Jesus. I need to be like these four people. I need to be bringing people. They brought a man that had needs to Jesus. I need to be bringing people that have needs to Jesus. Their friend, because of these four men, received two blessings. The most important one, there in verses 11 and 12 and verse 5, was the forgiveness of his sins. He could have stayed paralyzed the rest of his life, and with the forgiveness of sin, he could go to heaven. He could have been healed and not received the forgiveness of his sin, and physically he'd have been better, but spiritually he would not have been better off. And so because of these, the blessing of forgiveness, the blessing of being healed, you know, when we're like these four people, we can help people too. Not that we have the power to forgive sins, not that we have the miraculous power to heal people, but when we get people to Jesus, when we help people, we can help them find the place of grace and mercy and forgiveness. We can help them find ways to improve even their physical condition. And the last thing I want us to note about these four men that makes them heroes in my eyes is that God was glorified. There in verse number 12, this man rose. Remember, he was paralyzed. He couldn't walk. He rose, took his cot, and went out before all, so that all were amazed and glorified God. Here was a glorification of God that would not have happened had it not been for these four men. The paralyzed man, he couldn't get there by himself. He needed these four to take him. He needed these four not to let the crowd discourage them. He needed these four men to go the extra mile. He needed the blessing and the forgiveness of Jesus. And when it was done before them all, God was glorified and they were amazed. You know, when you and I are like these four men, when we take on their characteristics, we become spiritual heroes as well. And we don't even know their name.